financial problems, elder law, tax problems, business matters, divorce, personal injury, bankruptcy, your life, your reality. Life is complicated. There is the law and there is reality. Welcome to Law and Reality, sponsored by Thav Gross. Now here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome to this segment of Law and Reality. The topic today is It is tax time, because tax time is upon us. Jenny Lingo back, our tax specialist, tax manager, head of the tax department at Thav Gross. Welcome back for the show.
Good morning, Ken. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. Yeah. Our regulars, Brian Small. Hi, Brian.
Morning, Ken. Pleasure to be here.
Pat Simasko from Simasko Law, elder law expert.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk taxes today. Okay. First topic, we'll do a little case study towards the end of the show, but I want to start off because the deadline is coming. This year, the tax deadline is April 18th. Things to know when it comes to the tax filing deadline for this year. Things that go with respect to the deadline specific. Now, first of all, the reason why the tax deadline is not April 15th, just for the sake of everyone's edification, is April 15th is a Saturday. Emancipation Day is observed on April 17th this year instead of April 16th, and therefore tax day follows on the following Tuesday, which is the 18th. So that's your key date. If you file for an extension, your tax return due date is going to be October 16th. Now, here's the big issue. Here's the scenario that happens to too many people and really kind of boils all of our blood. You haven't paid in enough taxes for the tax deadline that's coming due April 18th, and you're sitting there saying, I know I owe, and you're worried about it, which I understand. So what you say to yourself is, if I don't file my return, I don't go on extension, and I just ignore the whole thing, then they won't catch up with me that fast. When I have the money, I'll then file the return and everything will be okay. Why does that get us so upset?
Well, it's the worst thing that you can do, because with the IRS, if you don't file timely, they're going to assess the failure to file penalty, which is 25% of the unpaid tax, and it accrues at 5% per month.
Whoa.
So all of a sudden, you've increased your tax liability by 25%.
Now think about that, 5% a month. April 18th, 5 months is September 18th. Before you go like that, you've increased your tax liability 25%.
Loan sharks will give it to you for less than that, I think.
Well, the best thing to do is then to go ahead and file your return. Now, if this is the only year that you owe for, and you owe less than $50,000, let's say, you can do a 72-month installment agreement with the IRS with no questions asked. So a lot of people who owe money and they can't afford to pay it all at once, it's $5,000 or $10,000, when I tell them if you file timely and we set up a 72-month payment plan, you won't have this 25% penalty and they're not going to levy or lien you. It's kind of like, I wish I would have known that on April 18th.
If you don't have the 25% penalty because you
filed
timely, but you can't afford to pay it, as long as you enter into an installment payment agreement, only interest accrues? There's no additional penalties?
Well, they will still assess the failure to pay penalty, but that accrues much slower at 0.5%.
In fact, let me lay out those numbers, because this is what people don't realize. The 25% failure to file penalty is a waste of money. You can never be assessed that penalty and save that 25% just by filing the return, or April 18th file your extension, April 18th file your extension and file your return by October 16th. The failure to pay penalty is only 0.5% per month up to 25%, so it's up to 50 months. Then on top of that, you're going to pay interest on the taxes you owe, but you're paying it at the Fed rate, which is between 3 and 4% the last few years. So let me give you an illustration of the difference. Think about the difference on credit cards when you're paying 20% interest on a credit card. Example, Bill owes $10,000 in taxes from 2014. They're due April 15th, 2017. The total penalty in interest as of April 15th, 2014, his return would have been due April 15th, 2015, not 2017. The total interest that he would accrue in penalty in 2 years on March 9th, 2017 would be $11,835 on his $10,000. So he'd end up spending $1,835 in interest and penalty. That would be $1,150 for 23 months at the 0.5% penalty plus $685 of interest. If he puts it on, if he pays the 25% failure to file penalty, add on another $2,500, now he's at $1,433 rather than $11,835.
It's $14,300 versus $11,000.
Yeah,
Wow.
just that extra $2,500 is a waste. Now you want to really pull your hair out, compare it to credit card debt. At 20% in 4 years, if you were paying 20% interest on $10,000, you would owe $20,736, whereas even at 4 years with the IRS failure to pay penalty, not failure to file, it only comes out to $12,967. The point is, file timely, no matter what. It's first of all, it's a crime not to file your return, but it's also a crime to waste money, and you're wasting a tremendous amount of money by not filing the return. Jenny can take care and get you time to pay the taxes without any difficulty. There's no crime in it. It's a shame to do that.
And if you don't file your taxes, you're wasting opportunity. See, we all know that life is creative, right? And throws us ups and downs. Well, if you want to discharge those taxes in bankruptcy, you had to have filed them in a timely fashion, and they had to be filed for at least 2 years. They had to come due for 3 years, and you couldn't have been assessed in the last 240 days.
Wait, you jumped, because that would be for discharging the taxes. But unless you file that return,
you'll never be able
yourself
to discharge them in a bankruptcy court if you don't file them.
Yeah,
If you put on your credit card, you could then.
We'll
but
talk
you gotta-
about that.
But you got to file that return. We'll be
Right.
back after the break.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the Medicaid and nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
You can't work. You have to deal with pain and stress. Worse yet, our system for applying for disability benefits seeks to deny you the benefits you're entitled. Jeff Kirschner is an expert in obtaining disability and workers' compensation benefits for his clients. You need to call Jeff before you apply or after you're denied to get the benefits you deserve. 888-235-HELP. 888-235-HELP. Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. All right, so as we were coming up to the break, Brian, you were mentioning the point that it's important to file. There's a concept, Jenny, am I correct, called the SFR. If you don't file your own tax return, hey, don't worry about it. Our friendly government, the US of A, will file the return for you.
What they do is it's called a substitute for a return, and if you don't file, eventually the Internal Revenue Service will file for you. Sometimes that return is accurate, other times it is completely inaccurate because they're not going to give you any deductions.
You get no itemized deductions.
Correct.
And that's not the killer.
No dependents.
The killer, well, he's got a killer. You have a killer too?
Well, before we get to that...
You're just a killer, Jenny.
Thanks, Ken. What Brian is going to say is that an SFR is never dischargeable in bankruptcy. One of the things that I like to point out to people is when you get the proposed assessment, it's not too late at that point to take action to preserve your right to file. To either file the return or at this point, if you respond to a notice of deficiency and file a petition in tax court, even if you agree with the liability, that may preserve your right to discharge it in bankruptcy at a later date as well.
A tax court determination is a dischargeable, if it's for income tax, is eventually dischargeable if it meets the same 3-year, 2-year, 240-day rule.
So the takeaway here is you want to make sure that that SFR doesn't go through. And before it happens, they're going to send you a letter with a proposed assessment.
You would get a proposed
you
assessment.
then go and get the return filed if you have time to do it. And if you don't, then if it goes right to an assessment, you challenge it in tax court.
Correct.
Aren't you getting a lot of letters from the IRS? Where's your return?
See, that's part of the
problem.
problem.
It's mainly people are just shoving their head in the sand and they don't want to deal with it.
They absolutely are. And I see people will come in with me with stacks of letters
and
like
that's
this,
okay.
and this, and this. And the reality is that you got to be very careful of what those letters say because, as Jenny will tell you, some of them are just warnings and some of them are final letters. And those final letters can be devastating to your ability to get rid of the tax debt or do anything with the tax debt.
For instance, your final letter is a 90-day letter, which is a letter where they've assessed the tax and it becomes final unless you file for a petition in tax court
within 90 days. And then there's also before they levy, it's a 30-day letter. And often what happens with people is they receive so many letters and nothing's happened up to a certain point that they think they can continue to ignore them. And the reality is
until their paycheck disappears one day.
Until we get to a certain point, once the IRS has issued all of the notices they're required to issue, then they start levying.
How long does that take from start to finish?
Start to finish can take about 6 months.
That's it?
It can. It's 6 months to about 1.5 years, depending on where you're at in the system and how much you owe.
The 90-day letter comes by certified mail.
Correct.
Here's a basic rule for everybody. If you get a certified letter, clients all the time call me up and say, Ken, there's a certified letter for me at the post office. What should I do?
Ignore it. Don't go get it because, you know, if you don't open it, you'll never figure out what it is and then they'll never catch you,
Well,
right?
I think the misconception
Oh, that's
is,
wrong?
Exactly.
That's what the client is thinking.
Well, the misconception is if they don't go get it, then it doesn't apply to them. And that's just simply not the
if I don't
case.
open the mail, it doesn't count.
I always explain it to the client this way. It's the duck theory. If someone is shooting bullets at you, you need to know what direction they're coming from so you can duck. So go get the letter, and then I'll tell you where to duck, and we'll take care of the problem. Yeah, but you can't walk out there and be in the unknown. You have to know what your problems are in order to solve them. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah, you know, it's coming. Actually, this is a great topic because a client came in. And he pulled a bunch of money out of his IRA to buy a house, and he never withheld any taxes. So all of a sudden now he spent all of his money, tax time's coming around. So the biggest thing is when you're pulling money out, withhold the tax before you pull it out. So you don't.
Yeah, when you pull
then
out
you
of a
don't-
401k, they withhold for you. But when you
20%,
pull out
yeah.
an IRA,
You don't have
they don't
to.
withhold.
Well,
Well,
you have the
it-
option. Sometimes
Right.
they do, sometimes they don't, but generally
They
you have
ask
to
you.
direct them.
And often they don't withhold enough because they don't know what your specific tax situation is. And if you're a retired individual and you're just receiving Social Security before, you may put yourself in a position where your Social Security wasn't taxable before because your income was low.
It
But
is
now all
now.
of a sudden that you've removed funds from an investment account, your income is higher, and now you have to pay tax on
And then your
that money.
Medicare will go up too.
All right, other things for the tax filing deadline. It's not April 18th yet. You can still reduce your tax liability by making an IRA contribution. You're allowed to make your contribution up to the tax filing deadline. And that's it's a good thing. Traditional or a Roth IRA, if you're 50 or under, you can put away $5,500 a year. If you're over 50, it's $6,500. My view, if you qualify for a Roth, do the Roth. In the Roth, you don't save the taxes on the money this year. It doesn't reduce your tax liability, but from that day forward, that money accumulates and earns interest and income tax-free, and when you pull it out, there's no tax. If your income bracket qualifies you for a Roth, I believe the Roth is the greatest thing out there. And then also, if you have a SEP, if you're self-employed, you can do a SEP IRA, and you can put away up to $53,000 a year, and you can do that up until the extended due date of the return. You can do a SEP if you have other employees, but you have to give them the same contribution. And typically, if you're the owner of the business, you don't want to give your employees a $53,000 profit sharing contribution. So a SEP has limited application, but for self-employed individuals, it's a great deal. Brian, we're coming up to the break, and we'll introduce it more when we get to Bill's tax problem. But I still wanted to go back to, when are the taxes dischargeable? We got a minute before break. What is this 3-year, 2-year, 240-day rule?
Well, it relates to income taxes. Remember, there's two types of taxes. You have income taxes and you have payroll taxes. And a lot of people get in trouble with both, and which we'll talk about after the break. But income taxes are dischargeable if the tax year came due more than 3 years ago.
So for 2013 comes due
April
14th, 14, April 18th, 2017, 2013 would be dischargeable.
The 19th. Yes, the
Yes.
next day.
Okay.
So that 3-year period, even though it's longer than 3 years, is going to be elapsed. The tax return had to have been filed for 2 years, and you couldn't have been assessed in the last 8 months.
You meet those, it's dischargeable under normal circumstances.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you're approaching retirement and don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your investments, and your savings. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Putting a solid strategy in place with Samasco Law legally protects your assets as well as your wishes. Since a will doesn't cover you medically or financially, Samasco Law goes beyond ordinary asset management protection to safeguard everything you have.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
It's time for announcements. Want to remind you to listen to us Tuesdays, noon to 1, 6 to 7 p.m., Law and Reality Live on WCHB 1200 AM 99.9 FM. Thursdays, 3 to 4 p.m., Law and Reality Now with Cliff Russell on 910 a.m. We've got seminars coming up. Wednesday, April 12th, 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. Debt elimination is the grand slam of finance. That's in honor of baseball season. We're going to focus on all the systems and methods we use to preserve future income for you and your family, getting out of debt using bankruptcy, getting out of debt with solutions outside of bankruptcy. Attendees get a free copy of my book, Dump Your Debt. Sign up at lawandreality.com or thavgross.com or call 888-235-HELP. Want to remind everyone we have free consultations. Just call the office or go on the websites lawandreality.com or thavgross.com and click and request the consult. Whether it's debt issues, tax issues, estate planning, business issues, elder law issues with Pat, disability or workman's compensation issues with Jeff Kirshner, you're always entitled to a free consultation. Just sign up or call 888-235-HELP. Take a look at the websites. We have 3 free reports: Business Formations, Loans and Grants for Small Businesses in Detroit, Retiree's Guide to Social Security from Pat Samasco, and How to Save Your Home Using Red X and Avoid Foreclosure. I want to thank our sponsors, Thav Gross, Samasco Law, and the Kirshner Law Office. Now back to the show.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. You can't work. You have to deal with pain and stress. Worse yet, our system for applying for disability benefits seeks to deny you the benefits you're entitled. Jeff Kirshner is an expert in obtaining disability and workers' compensation benefits for his clients. You need to call Jeff before you apply or after you're denied to get the benefits you deserve. 888-235-HELP. 888-235-HELP. Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
All right, now let's do a scenario. Bill's got a tax problem. Bill, because he's going to have a bill from the IRS, I suppose,
I'm
is
just
where
a
I
bill.
got that number.
Yes, I'm only a bill.
Oh, my goodness.
Take 2.
We should just start all over. Okay, let me give you the facts. Bill owes income taxes from 2011, 12, and 13, $60,000. He owes payroll taxes from a failed business of $150,000. This is when he got all behind on his income taxes and his payroll taxes. He wasn't paying in the employee withholding, federal withholding, Social Security, Medicare on his employees. He has credit card debt of $100,000, and he has a business loan that's in default with the bank for $150,000.
And those are Bill's total debts, right?
He's got $460,000 worth of debt. He is renting. He doesn't own a home. He's making $85,000 a year. He's got a family of 4, normal expenses. He's now got a job making $85,000, and he sees a future for him in his new company. You watch TV and radio, and you think pennies on the dollar, offer and compromise as a way of taking care of his tax debt. And look at what his taxes are. He's got $150,000 in payroll taxes, and he's got $60,000 in income taxes.
And he has $100,000 worth of credit card debt and a business loan of $150,000.
All right,
Plus
You
he
can
owes
think
his mom
offer and
money, I'm
compromise,
sure.
but I want to jump ahead for just a second and tell you that offer and compromise is all about part of the solution, but it's only part of the solution.
And I agree with you. And first of all, Jenny, what is the offer and compromise?
An offer and compromise is when the IRS or the Michigan Department of Treasury agrees to accept less than is due as satisfaction of the total debt.
Now, the thing, as I understand it doesn't matter how much you owe. You could owe $10,000, you could owe $10 million. The amount of the offer is based not on what you owe, it's based on the assets you have and basically your income less allowed expenses for 1 year.
Absolutely. It's formula driven. An offer and compromise, a lot of times people think is more of a negotiation, and it's really a math formula. So when you're hiring somebody to prepare an offer and compromise for you, they should be giving you a range of what they think that your offer is going to be. So when I meet with a client, we do a free consultation, and at the end of it I say, your offer is going to be $6,530.
Okay, and that's an important point because it's easy to analyze properly whether an offer will work or it won't work. Offers are great when you don't have a lot of assets, like Bill's case. Income taxes, Brian, you already said, are dischargeable in bankruptcy. In an offer, there's one catch. You have to stay clean for 5 years. Otherwise, if you fall behind on your taxes during the 5 years, you lose the benefit of the offer, right?
Absolutely.
On the
Okay.
offer part or the future taxes?
No,
or
they
both?
will reinstate the prior liability.
On the liability they
Can't mess
All right,
up.
so we're going to wrap this up fast. Brian, Chapter 7 bankruptcy is good for Bill. Why?
Well, first of all, because Bill's debts are tax debts, business loans, and things like that, his debts are non-consumer. So you mentioned his income was $85,000 a year.
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
care whether his income's $25,000 a year or $300,000 a year. I can still put Bill into a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, eliminate his underlying dischargeable debts, which include his income taxes, his credit cards, and his business loan, reducing his liability to $150,000 of non-dischargeable tax debt that Jenny can put
So
him
you
into
get
an offer.
rid of all of that, and then Jenny, you do the offer and compromise, because payroll taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy, like
Correct.
you said earlier. So then you put him into an offer and compromise afterwards or even before, it doesn't matter, and you get rid of the $150,000 payroll tax liability, right?
Absolutely. Based on these facts, it looks like he'd probably be a good candidate, but I'd be able to tell him in about an hour.
Yeah, because $85,000 of income, normal expenses, family of 4, all he's really going to have to pay is what's left after income less expense, right?
Absolutely.
So here's the point. In Bill's scenario, he's both situations. He needs the bankruptcy to get rid of the bank loan and the credit card debt, and he might as well get rid of the tax debt as well because he needs the bankruptcy anyway, because in getting rid of the tax debt, he doesn't have to worry about the 5-year stay clean rule. He will still have to stay clean for 5 years to get the benefit of the release and the offer and compromise and the payroll taxes, but it's still a great deal. Imagine your bill. You go from $460,000 of debt to 0, just like that. We'll be back next week with Law and Reality.